Recently I read Eyeless in Gaza, and hopefully we'll speak about it soon. A fantastic tale of a cold, detached man trying to cure his indifference and learn how to love. But for right now, we simply need one quote from it, where the main character, Anthony Beavis, speaks about an old injury. At the time, it was horrible, an accident which left him in the hospital for months and with a large scar on his leg. But years later, when asked about the scar, he simply remarks, "One can't remember pain, only its accompaniments, its occasions." As the novel goes on, we learn just how wrong he is, and I immediately felt he must be because there are a few pains I can remember so exactly. Like being 16 and standing in the dark in your former step-grandmother's kitchen, gripping your new smartphone as tightly as possible while you wait for a response from your partner after a cryptic, angry text. Are they about to break up with you again? 5 minutes pass, and then 7, and then 10 turns to 13, and 17 into 21, and you're questioning what you did wrong until eventually, before that little scent timer can reach 30 minutes, you shoot off an "Are you okay?" text, desperately needing a response to know you're still together, because that pit in your stomach was growing, and it feels like it's even bigger than you are, and somehow you're going to fall into yourself and cease to be. I can still recreate that feeling, the hollow emptiness extending beyond my form, the nauseating waves within it, even though I no longer care for the time, the place, or the person. I've had worse as an adult. I've angrily thrown my car into reverse on a deserted country highway after missing my exit, too distracted by the heartache which drove me out to buy sleeping pills and not wanting to deal with even an extra 5 minutes in that sober state. But even that situation would feel trivial today, paling in comparison to the responsibilities and memories I hold with me now. I have too much on my plate for such a reaction like that. I mean, how did those kind of things ever really upset me and others so much that we derailed our lives for them in the first place? As a child, lost balloons found tears, revoked consoles required consoling, and a 3-month relationship ending felt like it would hurt for 3 years. Well, now I can have the entire future of my housing threatened and still go to work and edit videos as if nothing has happened, even if I'm a bit less productive. Of course, we understand part of why this is. New responsibilities have shifted our perspectives. We can't afford to be so sad over a lost item or connection that we fail to function for days or weeks at a time because we already have to use up our vacation days for the year for some reason, so missing work means getting fired means losing your housing, and losing your housing means losing your humanity as far as we decide to treat people. There's just something more important which dulls the reaction. But a more interesting way to look at it isn't in the now, but in the then. How did these moments impact us so much as kids? How did a balloon floating away seem to take our whole life with it? Well, because that's what it was actually doing. As far as we knew, that was the worst thing to have ever happened in our lives. A scrape knee means nothing to an adult because it's happened hundreds of times. Each new one is just 1/100th of the pain. But to a child who's just becoming conscious of the world, their first real thoughts and memories beginning to form, a scraped knee isn't just pain. It's the discovery of pain, the first instance of a plague upon life when rose-colored reality breaks down into the harshest stinging they've ever known. The truly worst moment of their entire life. The next time it happens, it's either the first or the second worst. The third time is the first, second, or third. The 10th time, one time within there, and by the 100th, it hardly means a thing in comparison to the rest. Probably it's just an average, unlikely to ever take the top spot and truly be the worst. And even if it is at or near the top, it's not alone. It's compared to, well, many other instances of pain, and as such, less important. This is the process of aging, experience diluting and becoming more dulled. Now, to add some depth to the issue, it isn't all just pain. The same thing applies to pleasure and everything in between. We aren't made of pain, we are made of memories. However, pain is in a way the focus because that's what our forms dictate. Pleasure is a matter of persistence. If we feel something good, then our bodies want us to continue that thing, to stay in the moment, not to change something. But pain is the message to run, jump, flee, whatever it takes to remove this stimulus and find a better one. It drives action. Boredom creates games. Loneliness creates connection. Hunger creates meals. Even if pleasure can do the same thing, pain must do so. This is why, despite existence being more like memory, you can often hear and maybe believe that existence is pain. So let's examine that. Why do we feel this way? What does it do to us? And what can we learn from it all? Sometimes this traps us, the memories of that most painful moment, in a way defining what life is and can ever be, and this could very well be called the moment of realization that existence is pain. This will be important later. For example, a girl who could never confess to the object of her love before he disappeared. The days with him made things more meaningful and held with it the possibility of a greater future as well, the persistence of this meaning into every future action. You never know, they could have been together and happy forever. But now when she goes to school, when she walks home alone, when she hangs out with people who comment on his disappearance, it's all reminders of what once was, what could have been, and what never will be again. It's the same moments as always. Wake up, school, family dinner, sleep, and repeat, but now each one is with the perspective that she'll be doing it alone, with less to look forward to, less enjoyment at each second. Every moment forward is dulled by this loss. She desperately tries to wash this moment off her hands the first time they met and touched, because how can she go on when each moment is simply a worse version of what could have been? Sure, it's just one moment, one piece of the puzzle, but as she says,
however, it's the individual pieces of the puzzle that form the whole picture.
You can look at the entirety of life and find other joys, but you can also look at each one of them and recognize that it could be better just the same. She's confined by it, shot in fisheye with the surroundings wrapping around her, everything past the realization of life's truth distorted by it. And so she gives up on everything past the realization, lured into a back alley by the ghost of her untold love, which turns out to just be a monster using his form. Its whole plan was to lure her here and feast on her to regain its strength, and she submits. What's the point of going forward into moments marred by pain when one heap of it here at least takes that loss away, makes her one with the object of it? It balances the equation and then ensures the act can never be undone. Her life ends rather than existing tarnished. This is one reaction to it, to simply give up. If life is so much pain in every moment forward, why even live it? But there are other reactions, of course. We find one of these in another girl, one who's struggling with purpose in a world full of such negative things. How does one justify existence in this painful world? She's just about where our last girl ended. Luckily for her, though, a friend rises to the occasion to help, offering a message of acceptance.
In this world, everything simply exists. Even though there is suffering, you must still love and accept this world with all its faults.
If nothing else, the guidance of someone who feels wise offers some peace, as even if she doesn't get the reason yet, someone seems to. But of course that's taken away. She finds this friend dead at the place where they next planned to meet. Just at the moment where it seemed like things would be okay, when there was someone who knew how to move forward, it is gone. Just as in the last case, everything is more dulled now. However, the words still remained. No matter how you struggle, this is our world, spurring a different reaction, radical acceptance. If she embraces that existence is nothing but pain, or at least means nothing, that every joy meets an end and nothing can be done about it, then there isn't really any reason for sadness, because this isn't pain per se, it's really just how things are. If there's no way for it to be different, if everything is just one elongation of the same meaningless substance, then nothing can truly be lost to incur negative feelings. The point of them is defeated, and so they cease to matter. Under this mindset, nothing really matters. Her friend's death, well, it would always happen at some point, nothing to be sad about, just existence. Getting someone else to trust and then be killed by the creature from our last case, well, that's just a part of things as well, nothing to be done about it either. One must simply accept these things and move on, achieving joy through the total lack of its opposing force. This is a step further in reacting to the nature of existence, to accept it so much that one has no needs, and as such no meaning for pain. One more step forward in responses, we can look at what lies in the subjective nature of reality. It can only exist as we perceive it. If we accept it, it is so, and if we reject it, then it must not be. If we change our perception, then we can change the space pain has to exist within, which means we can effectively change the pain. We find this in the story of a lonely boy who lives out his days in a pattern, going to school, going to work, coming home, and most importantly, playing a dating sim before repeating. It's the kind where there's multiple options, but each one is a good outcome, where you tell her exactly what to be and she just becomes it. It's a world of comfort, a stark contrast to reality where he has little control, an overbearing father directing him to get into a good state school so he can get a good standard job. No pain, but no pleasure either, just a guaranteed future existence. Unlike our last girl, he's had a sort of radical acceptance forced upon him, and so he doesn't desire it in his response. Instead, he spends much time in the game as possible, even acting out the choices to place himself even further within it. If he could be within that code, he would do it in a heartbeat. The issue is fail states, though. No matter how much we try to escape reality, it surrounds us and consumes us. It always calls us back, due once again to those pesky needs. It's complicated, messy, chaotic, and random, and your choices never guarantee a good outcome. Essentially, consequences exist, unlike in the game. This is the dissatisfaction. But this provides a method of escaping it in recognizing it. If you remove the consequences, you remove the pain included in reality. You strike away the need, but unlike the last case, you keep all the pleasure too. A video game alone can't do this, but his perception can, so he begins to alter it with a drug that makes you more bold, essentially lowering his inhibitions as if consequences didn't exist. Slowly, this lacking starts to blur the lines between reality and the game, as he manipulates a new coworker at his job into being more like the girl from the game, giving her the wrong uniform, making excuses for her hair needing to be up, and then making the game more like the girl, changing the graphics and voice lines to be her and recordings of her. Losing sight of what is and what isn't, he begins to get more and more obvious, eventually coming close to outright assault, as if she can't disobey him, and simply dealing with the sting through more of the drug, leading to his firing and this constant supply being the only important thing in his life. But then that's kind of the point. Consolidate it all, make as few consequences as possible so that none arise to create pain. Remove complicated real-life needs and only leave one aspect of video game resource management. So long as he can keep taking it, he has everything he wants through altered perception. Sure, real consequences are happening, but so long as he isn't aware of them, then there can't really be any effect. As far as he knows, she's his forever, and that's that. There are many reactions to the nature of existence, but for now, this is our last case. Remove the consequences, such as through perception of them, and you get pleasure without the pain. A common thread throughout all of this is the definition of life around a single moment in time. When love disappears, when an important friend dies, when the perfect object of desire exists right now and as such never could again, whatever the specific wording is, the idea is the same. This is it, now or never. The moment passes by and everything has to be compared to what life was or would be like without it. The nature of existence becomes easy to see and they flail against it to prevent meals from tasting worse without him or music from sounding worse without her, whatever it may be. They're seeking to prevent that, the pileup of so many similar sentences that spells out dull life after youth. In short, the joy of life, the important things, are left in the past as time moves on. Optional pleasure builds, but necessary pain builds faster. More responsibility to carry, making life feel less and less and less and less. At least this is the idea of Poom Poom, a Pied Piper character created from the stories of a budding author and the memories of a strange boy. In his teenage years, he's become obsessed with ridding the world of pointless things, like taking his PC apart to remove any useless components instead of just having fun with it. He used to be more normal, once just a regular kid excited for his father to see him perform in the school play, only his dad worked overtime and missed it instead. That was his moment, that realization where pain became so apparent and everything fell into question. Does care really exist in a world where work can steal a father from his son on the most important day of his life so far? Is this what he has to look forward to, disappointing his own family in the future because he's so busy working on a job that won't even be finished or mean anything? This is likely why he's so focused on removing useless things. It's what he learned. Efficiency, cold and fast like adult life. If it was going to sting him, why not just embrace it? Make it his own tool to sting the world back so that he'll be ahead, not writhing in pain like the others. Yet another response, and the proof that gives birth to Poom Poom and his ideology.
I'm just a memory. The memories of the important things adults forget about as they grow up. Of all the things adults abandon.
Living in a half-finished amusement park, the very thing the father was working overtime on, he calls out to those friends, souls on the brink of adulthood who are just coming to understand existence. Musicians who fail their auditions to music colleges, writers who are told to give up and get a normal job, all the people whose dreams are about to be killed. He takes their child self out of them and protects it here in this forgotten space where they all play together and forget pain ever existed. The adult body can do whatever it likes after that, most often removing themselves from the world. He gives them a balloon to symbolize all of this, an object of childhood that, once let go, could never be regained, floating so effortlessly away from someone, always against their will. The second the grip is loosened, it's over, and so he tries to prevent this from happening, tries to make a reality worth living before it's too late. He sees himself as the one embracing reality, not rejecting it, because based on everything we've discussed, he believes that if anyone truly saw the nature of life, they could not seek to live it, they would seek to be removed from it. Anyone who has these realizations, who comes to see that to exist means to suffer, and just continues as if nothing is wrong, who keeps persisting through ever-lessening experience, they are the illogical tricksters, fooling themselves that it's worthwhile so long after joy has been tainted. As he says, human nature denies the past in order to justify the present. But do you believe there is anything in the present worth justifying? As such, he's the truth teller in remembering the past, embracing reality by keeping these people as kids, because to stay a child is the only way to truly exist without illusion, to exist not in spite of the past, but with it, with everything so often left behind and forgotten, even though it once defined us. There is a serious appeal to, and truth within, his ideas. Life is built on having a short enough memory and the dilution of all experience. I mean, think about how anything would function if everyone still felt as vividly as they did when they were children. Every pleasure would be so great that no one would want anything but their most simple desires right now. Every pain would be so consuming that its newness, that each hit of it would shut down societies for weeks. The workers unloading your goods all stop to eat cake for a whole day, and your doctor is too busy crying over literal spilled milk to operate on you, and you die. Important decisions wouldn't just not get made, they simply wouldn't exist. If this is how our species existed, well, it simply wouldn't exist. To be so vivid forever would be to have died out many years ago, long before any of us came to be. We exist due to the dilution of experience. We come to be more dull to these pains and pleasures over time so that we can make room for those after us, so that we can build something which outlives us. And once this occurs, once we're accustomed to strong feelings, we're meant to forget them when some do rarely take the top spot, the worst and the best. Something comes along and mucks up all of our plans, makes us feel like crap, and then in what just feels at first like mockery, it's just gone. But this means it moves back one space in our memory as the next things happen, just something of daily life, a drive, a meal. Then one comes next, a restless hour in bed, a new task at work, another average, and pushes it back again and again and again and again until, so far as right now is concerned, that powerful thing is long gone behind hundreds of small, unimportant ones piled high to block view of it. A deluge of daily adult life coats all, and that which once defined sits in the corner dusted and forgotten, uncared for and so broken down that even recalling it would have little effect. We forget, we move on, we survive. By nature, that's what we have to do. The point is, Poom Poom isn't making this up. There is a basis for it all. Important life may end sooner than we think. Can we really deny that we need more to be satisfied, a stronger hit of the chemicals than we once took to feel something? As a child, everything was brilliant. The first love of my life, which I assumed would be marriage, for better or worse, sitting in a basement Food Network and Miyazaki movies that I'd never seen, fumbling around at the intersection of physical desire and lack of experience, but never enough to gain that experience. That was enough. I didn't need anything more than that to make everything which surrounded worthwhile. school was fine because afterwards we'd sit in half silence. An empty home was okay because it finally got to be often left, and there was no anxiety because this set the future. To the one who hated me, to the one who manipulated me, I would have happily given my silly little life and perpetuated that innocent and naive feeling. But we ended it and I aged. I learned how to think instead of just feeling. I couldn't just love now. I needed to know what it was first. I needed experimentation. I needed definition. I needed to know where it intersected with freedom and liberty, where society's approval ended and where my true desires began. Love stopped being so simple, so pure, so easy. It didn't exist to be enjoyed. It existed to be justified. To prove me, my worth, secure my future in some way, benefit my life more than itself, complex and messy and dulled by all which surround it. Worse is for you to decide or not, but different is for sure. However, I think existence as pain is an incomplete shorthand. It doesn't serve as a philosophy itself, but rather only as the basis for further thought. Poom Poom's idea is flawed, and we can see that it is the idea itself which has caused the real danger in these cases. In the first, the girl is eventually saved from the monster by the show's namesake, Boogiepop, who remarks,
Has been rendered harmless to humans. The problem is, some troubled soul like yourself offers it your life.
If we examine the situation, this is totally true. The monster is weakened to the point that, despite being able to normally devour humans, it needed to first find someone who had an emotional connection to this form, lull them into a defenseless state and desperate state, pull them away from anyone else in a long dark alley, and then finally try to eat them only once they were too depressed to resist. A human simply living life, literally even just moving forward like her friends were, would be in no danger. All she had to do was move. What allowed her to be at risk in this situation only occurred because she first held this mindset. There was no point to going on. And if she didn't believe that, then it wouldn't have had this chance. This makes it clear. The idea that life is over doesn't necessarily create the entire monster, but it is the first step, what allows the danger to rise, what allows it to feast and grow. It locks us into a state where it is so because we refuse anything else, and then justify it because it is so, a flawed circular logic. This is expanded upon in our second case with the girl who accepted the world as it is. The problem here is straightforward incompletion. It isn't, no matter how you struggle, this is our world, but rather it must be, no matter how you struggle, this is our world. Now what? An assumption that was lost in translation. Putting it another way, there's a difference between accepting the world to be happy and accepting the world and then being happy. The former is simply casting off care, importance, true feeling, and existing with no purpose, exactly what she did, where nothing could bother her because nothing mattered. It seems valid enough because, yes, the world can be awful, and every single person, place, and thing we care about and can be cared about will be taken away someday. Nothing is forever. Feeling this is always going to be horrible, but refusing to feel it is what helps create it in the first place. As with the last case, we see the flaw best with the monster, who she actually begins to help. It calls to her on the train, but it seems to say it was the opposite.
You. So, you're the one who called me.
It singles her out from the crowd and sticks to her, revealing itself more properly when there's a chance, and from there, it's as easy as possible as she's tricked into bringing other people before it to help them love the world too, in reality lives that it's feasting on to grow even stronger and dangerous once again. This world love, her radical acceptance, it made her the obvious mark, the person so unbothered that they could easily be picked out and abide by anything. Perfect for the monster. It allows her to introduce others to that risk, get the idea into their heads too. The point is that it made her not blind enough, but willing enough to accept even something like this, quite literally bringing others to their deaths without a care. And what are the results? Pain still exists, she just doesn't care about it. So under this mindset, nothing has been accomplished. That's the thing, she came to feel this way because something awful seemed to happen to her, some great pain, and yet now she's just allowing them to happen anyway. She's treating the results and not actually going after the causes. It's doing nothing more than perpetuating the cycle which broke her to begin with. Simply accepting existence as pain with nothing further is the same as giving up. It's circular, it's pointless. This continues even more with our last case, where blind is more fitting. The place the boy is getting the drug from, of course, it's the monster, made powerful enough from the last cases to act on its own. It's distributing it in order to create slaves, people who are willing to overlook any kind of grievance in order to get their fix, even someone else being killed right in front of them, and even knowing that one day they'll have to be like the one they just saw die too. But when you live in a world without consequences, well, this means nothing because that's what it is. Why would someone in this state recognize negative actions at all when the point is that they simply can't exist, that all one sees is pleasure? That's the result of this response, that he's worse than dulled to experience, he simply can't experience, and so he'll never be moved by anything, and the monster can do as it pleases to him or to anyone since he'll never stop it. Once again, it just makes things worse. It's a different method from the last case, but to the same result. He's aiding the monster, creating the issue in order to pretend that it doesn't exist. From these responses, we see clearly that the thought is incomplete. There's no way it can simply end that existence is pain. Yet, so often it does. There has to be a reason for that. We're not doing these things just because, so why is it? Well, the common thread through all these cases is ease. An easier path than being active in reality and trying to make something of it. To think that life is over, which of course is easy when we think that it can happen in a single moment, it means that one has no reason to ever try. Having to learn things they never asked to, work jobs they never wanted to, go through this life which uses pain to demand it all, to think it's over is a calming escape. We add in the logic earlier that pain is passive and that pleasure is active, and we find our solution. We believe that existence is pain because, well, it solves the problem of persistent and unyielding effort that life demands. Meanwhile, curing or preventing that pain, eating food, drinking water, getting some rest, while these things do have some pleasure associated with them, they are all effort. They don't just come about, we have to make them come about. Pain is passive, and relieving it, as well as pleasure, is active. This is also related to aging. When we're younger, this is all still the case, but the reward is much better. When each effort you make leads to the greatest pleasure you've ever known to date, acting on them is pretty easy. Even if fun isn't making itself, you get so much out of making it that you just do it anyway. But each time is less and less, and the reward slowly shrinks, while at the same time the pain, the loss, and the longing grows and grows. For the same kinds of efforts, we get less and less. Happiness becomes like a skill, something we have to develop and grow better at, learning the ways in which it comes easier to us, the most efficient uses of our energy now that the novelty is gone, while pain remains a simple constant against our will. Eventually we get tired of this arrangement and we want an excuse, so we place our feelings deep under thoughts and intellectualize an answer. Existence is pain, a collection of truths which justifies giving up. The question then, since we know this is harmful, becomes how we counter that difficulty, how we get ourselves and others to take a harder path to greater benefit. Unfortunately, the answer is that we don't. It is difficult, it gets more difficult, and we can't do anything about that fact. Some parts of life will always suck, and as we said, experience must dull. But we can still argue that we should try and work that happiness skill anyway, because there is a logic to it all that makes sense where the other side failed, that it will work out where giving up never did. In our first case, yes, the girl did experience pain, and yes, it did dull the rest of her experience after that. Every moment will be without a former source of joy. But we focus so much on pleasure dulling that we haven't talked enough about pain doing the same thing. Why don't we move the start point, shift our perspective to stress that? If we take this moment, one after he's already gone, and look at what's going to dull, isn't that dulling a good thing? Because it's the pain of the loss which will be shrinking, and her overall happiness which will be rising in comparison. Yes, if you compare everything to that one specific point in time right before the loss, everything might still feel worse, but that will fade, and so will this after it, proving a new baseline for different thoughts and feelings. So long as we allow our perspective to shift forward, focus on something in the present, we can feel less dulled. And this is reinforced in the fact that humans will change, another fundamental truth. Had she gone on and kept living with willingness, engaging with a friend who's willing to make efforts to bring her along even when she's so sad, singing karaoke willingly and keeping up with the group when they walk, she would have found something novel enough, new things to give her new appreciations, new qualities, and make her a somewhat new person. A person who would no longer feel that the one she just lost was the perfect one for her. Even if karaoke just introduces her to a new favorite song, that still makes her no longer the same person that the boy would be perfect for, and so that pain matters less and less. To go on living, collecting new experiences, it will eventually reduce all the pains. The only thing is that one has to be active in the process. It can't just be existing to exist. If one is just going through the motions, getting up the same way, and going to school the same way, and talking to the same people in the same way, unresponsive to all the possible changes happening around them, well, of course they're going to feel closer to that pain because they're still in the same space as it, experiencing only that which can truly be dulled by it by having once involved its source. But did she ever sing karaoke with him? Did she ever see all these people with him? No, so why does this night have to be compared to it when that's in an entirely different class of time? It's a false equivalence. We have to avoid the thought that it's over, that this is all the same, because only without that can we be active enough to not feel that's the case, to allow the pain to be diluted instead of the pleasure. Yes, it is tough, but it's the only option which promises to lessen the pain instead of let it grow. So logically, it's all we can do. Now, as for the second case, we find that radical acceptance is also unable to reach the kind of joy that radical acceptance now what could reach, and so must be discarded as well. Because what she is doing is preventing pain through preventing feeling, casting off importance and the like as we said, but the method of it is pretty interesting. Essentially, it's intellectualizing everything. Rather than witnessing her actions leading to someone else's death and then feeling remorse, she simply examines the definitively provable facts of the case without emotion, i.e. that someone died and not where the blame lies, and finds a logical line through them in accordance with radical acceptance. No feeling, only thought. Logically, if this can be applied to something as extreme as death, then it must be applicable to things less consequential. It wouldn't make sense as a theory if it succeeded in tackling death but failed when faced with a stubbed toe or something like that. This means that everything in her life, not just the most painful things, needs to be run through this process. And so if it's all about thought and not about feeling, then is she feeling anything at all? Not only is she blocking out pain, she's blocking out everything. This hasn't succeeded in making life any better. All it's done is turn it into the same washed out gray everywhere, a meaningless and endless nothing. Built from the same basis as Poom Poom's ideas, but it created exactly the thing he claimed to be against. It simply doesn't make sense to do this. And even if it didn't revoke positive moments entirely, it would reduce the capacity for them because of how much mental effort that takes. The way we see her sitting there and going through these moments to process them in such detail that there is no feeling left. It doesn't just happen instantly, but is applied like that each time. It takes time and space and mental energy. So while she's sitting there doing this, how many other potentially great moments are just passing her by? How many friends, how much time with family, how many things she could have gone and learned and done? In trying to avoid a handful of bad ones, she's missing the chance for every single good one. This then feeds the self-justification because she's experiencing less to work against her ideas from the very act of implementing them, especially one like this which is designed for easy stasis. Not to mention that it leaves her like a child in adult skin, unprepared for pain anymore, because what happens when that stasis might be broken? Sure, it's worked for everything so far, but how would she handle a moment which breaks the theory? Normally we build defenses against this exactly because we experience negative moments, as they slowly become dulled of course, but also as we actively understand and process them. Instead of trying to make them make sense according to some incomplete philosophy, we could just be making them make sense according to themselves, the specifics of our situations and lives. If we do this, let those little aspects of it hurt us by spending time with them, we can become dulled not to experience, but to these specific annoyances of it instead, learning what was truly bad about them and what just was. We know them, we can learn how to avoid them, and we can let them surprise and tear us down less and less each time, using the dilution of experience we hate so much against the worst of it instead. if it must happen, why not make it happen as we see fit, only against the negative experience, right? Understanding rather than ignoring the worst is what really prevents it from hurting us again. Ignoring it as she does, covering it under so much standardized thought, it is what leads to her terrible ending, where Boogiepop points out that the reality of her situation, how the monster was simply using her and the evil she did, and all she can do when faced with pain again is to ask to be taken away just the same. And then to be told,
"I'm sorry, but you're not even worth taking, Mrs. Smith."
Because she'd never built adult capabilities but stewed in her childish ones. Coldly stated by this phantom, she was worthless because her methods made her so. The third case is about perfection, how the search for all pleasure and no pain defeats itself just like the others. In concept, it actually seems like it could work. It might take a while, but if you wait around for the perfect situation, one which won't hurt you while giving you everything you want, like a virtual girlfriend, then you will have beaten the game through sheer patience. However, the logic to prove the concept can't become reality is found in how we conceive of perfection to begin with. Now, the only leap this might make is that we have to imagine perfection is quite similar to infinity, but that's not an uncommon philosophical claim. Now, infinity is nonsensical. Inherently, we can't witness or hold it. But we actually do have a pretty good mathematical concept of it. It's the largest number or set of numbers possible. Multiply by 2, add 173, divide by 7,264, it will always remain the same because it's everything. But how would we actually reach it? How would we make the concept more solid? Well, we could simply add 1. Keep moving one space up the number line, imagining the biggest number at one time, and then plus 1 to it because there can always be more after it, and you have infinity. Kind of. While we have a decent conception of it, the conception is more or less that it can't be reached, that it exists by the capacity of being able to always be larger. So does it really exist, or does the method to reach it just exist without end? Infinity isn't a goal, it isn't a state, but rather a process. The same can be said of perfection, because we can imagine a good basis. In this boy's case, say a cute girl. Then you add something else, say a certain shy personality, and it's more perfect. But you have to fine-tune that personality through specific decisions, as in this situation she would say this, and in this one she would say that. Because no vague statement would truly match up to complex human desire. So she's cute, but cute in a very respective way to your taste, crafted by multiple examples, and she's shy, but only 100% when it's you, and like only 50% when it's another guy because you don't want to get jealous, and not at restaurants when ordering because that's something you think is childish, but yes in pictures because you think that's modest and adorable, and just like with infinity, perfection goes on in this process as we keep finding new situations which they must need to be perfect in, never actually reaching an end, but only applying the method. The video game is only satisfying because it is so limited. As such, actually taking this kind of method will never make one happy, but once again simply keep them unable to handle pain when it does naturally occur. But maybe more importantly, it also shows some cracks in the base assumption that there is a moment of realization, a balloon let go which can't be recaptured. Those rely on perfection, a lost love which was perfect, a former friend who had the perfect ideas, an amazing perfect girlfriend in abstract future space, or that needs to be here right now in this one that is her potential. All these moments of lost life believe that we are losing some perfect younger whimsy, which simply can't be the case since it isn't a state, but a method. They were never perfect, we just lack the perspective of how many other possibilities there could be, of all the ways in which those moments may have actually been worse or even outright negative. After all, did we ever consider how we defined good and bad in this whole thing? We've all just been using our own definitions, which means they're subjective. So at any given moment, a new context could change the definition. Exactly why we have different ones to begin with, because individuals have different contexts. When I think of having been happy at all in that terrible high school relationship, what I'm really thinking of is how little I knew. My parents divorced when I was very young, so love already had a shaky basis there, but honestly that was for the best, because them being together would have only made it much worse. I guess I can sum it up best in one way. For all my childhood, there was a hole in the basement door from where one of them tried to break it down with a folding chair to get at the other one. Love didn't really exist in that household, not even a 1950s level of divorce is taboo so we can't tolerance of each other. It altered what I thought love could or should be, and any perspective I was gaining elsewhere from my friends. Well, they were primarily budding drug addicts who had little more concern than how soon will she touch me, so that didn't provide much better. The result is that I had no idea what love meant. As far as I knew, all you needed to have a healthy relationship was just not trying to break down doors to hit each other. So when I met someone who was willing to spend their time with me at all, I just assumed it was a good relationship in comparison to what I'd known. Yes, they dumped me from time to time because they got bored of people easily, and they would make demands of what I could and couldn't do at my own birthday party, and they would get cold and pissy at me any day after they fought with their parents, but that was perfect compared to what I knew. So without a moment of doubt, I assumed we would be married one day. I assumed I would be wed to the person who convinced all of our friends to cut me off just as I transferred to a new school to be closer with one of them, an active decision to ruin my life and the source of emotional scars which made love numb for years. The point is that, as far as I knew, that situation, that basement with mind-numbing television and awkward half-clothed makeout sessions, that's what life was all about. That's what could be lost without recovery. Had I maintained that view forever, I wouldn't have had any of the things and people around me that I now love and understand as leagues more beneficial and healthy. I wouldn't have these words for any of you right now because there was exactly one period in my teenage and adult life where I wasn't trying to make it on this stupid site, and it was when I was busy devoting all of my time to them. I never would have done this if we stayed together. I wasn't lying in the intro. I can remember the exact pain those days with them left me in. It's the same now as it was then. But I've experienced so much more, grown so much, that the exact pain of my 16-year-old self just means nothing. It is still there, it always will be, but each day it becomes less of me. Pain doesn't just collect as we age, it also lessens. And so does happiness. These things, they just are. There's nothing more. The very premise of the ideas that this Pied Piper lays out are wrong. The dilution of experience doesn't necessitate an end to genuine life so early on. It simply denotes to an end to the life we once knew. But so long as we choose to take a new path forward, a new, similar yet distinct life will follow, one with all the potential to be better, all the potential to be just as, if not more vivid, so long as we fill it with new, yet to be dull things, so long as we zoom in past the abstract which so easily justifies whatever we wish, and look at the specific, tease out the new and the novel from the indistinct mass. Giving up is the only fail state. We see this definitively with a case deeply intertwined with Poom Poom, the girl who authored his existence, which was merged with the boy's memories. She dreamt of writing fairy tales for work, and Poom Poom was one of those. But this dream is slashed when she's going over test scores and focuses with her advisor, and gets told that since her math score was higher, she should pursue that over literature. Without much fuss, but with clear depression, she accepts. What else can one do against the realism of an adult? Going home afterwards, she burns all of her writings and accepts this future of bland corporate offices and a stable enough home. This is her moment when reality calls and pain is apparent. Nothing to be done but move on, right? And while she does do this well on the surface, she understands the point of it deep down, and this leads to her being called by her own creation, having her childhood self removed and leaving the adult form without even those remaining hints of whimsy as Poom Poom seeks to keep them, what he falsely sees as the only worth of life, as pure as possible. So what else is this adult shell to do but seek an exit, just as so many others from this situation have? She's stopped at the last minute, but what use really is there? It's over, it's all burned. Pain has made itself known and there's nothing to be done about it. Life is over, so why trick oneself? But hasn't that made the flaw so apparent? Life only became totally unworth living when he took what remained of the whimsy out of her, out of all of them. He is the one who killed them, really. Because so long as that part exists within them, something important to their own philosophy always remains. Possibility. And that's what's been so upsetting, that as we grow, as we collect experiences and form ourselves, we also exclude a lot more. You lock yourself into one career path and hundreds of others become less possible. You take one partner and hundreds of others are suddenly cut off. You choose one place to live and now you definitively don't live everywhere else. Each possibility we make real is thousands of others made unreal. Enough time in your life is mostly defined by what never happened than by what did. But while this idea is depressing, it isn't the end. It is if you rip what remains out of people and leave them with nothing, but possibility always exists, even if less likely, so long as you hold that base component, the choice for it to exist. Because yes, this girl did burn all of her work, and that seems to say it no longer exists. But once Poom Poom is destroyed, she regains the thing which spawned that work, those remaining hints of easy whimsy and lacking pain. Her old self, it's still a part of her, it's still in her. She has the requirement for all those possibilities. She still exists as such, and so even if it's less likely, even if it's now set back, the future she desires and the work she did towards it still exists in her mind and in her will. And so she starts again. The only thing which ever made it impossible is when a kid ghost convinced her that it was impossible, took the idea of reduced possibility and for mental ease told everyone it was no possibility, kept them from looking deeper as we must. If we're so upset about lost possibilities, why should we ever actually take the final step and kill them all? This existence is pain, full stop philosophy is illogical because of that, because it confirms its own basis through existing. It's a bastardization of our will, using it to kill its own result and then saying that that power came from beyond us when really it was always in us to begin with. Just like possibility, happiness is not a choice, but the ability to accept happiness when it comes is one. It is the base condition which must be met for all else. So we can never accept something which tells us otherwise. We can never give up due to our fears because the second we do is the second they actually become powerful. Yes, the world sucks. Life does mean some pain and society tends to make it all a little bit worse. We often have to give up our dreams for realism. We'll have to work extra to keep alive our plan Bs and none of it will ever really be fair. But the possibility will exist within us. Even if it's just 30 minutes a day, she's still writing. She's still keeping it alive. And that's the required start for anything better. That's all we can guarantee. So why not? Always ask, now what?